Hey everybody, Dr. Baird here. I just wanted to go over your first module to kind of give you an idea of obviously what to expect, but also what to emphasize. What I'd really like you to take out of the content of this module, and what I'd like you to focus on as you move into like the first forms of assessment and engagement. Before I begin, I'll go ahead and preemptively apologize for the gnawing sounds going on behind me. That is my Beagle Deacon, and he is just going to town on that rawhide, and I do not have the heart to take it away from him. Anyways, this is your module. You can see over here on your right. It may look a little bit different by the time you open it. I am actually doing this on, oh Lord, what day is it? Can never tell these days. I'm doing this on Thursday. So I may actually spruce your module up a little bit before I actually release it to you. But it gets a little something that looks like this. Yeah, I'll go ahead and first note what your main reading is. The crux of it is going to be Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And I feel like I should have a little asterisk that I am botching Freire's name. It is not pronounced that way. My very good Brazilian friend Daniel told me, unless you can roll your R's like a Brazilian, you cannot pronounce his name correctly. So I'm just not going to attempt to. We'll call him Freire. Pedagogy of the Oppressed is a classic in the sociology of education. Freire lays out the theory of how education has been conducted in the past and the way it can best be conducted further or in the future. And his whole notion is that education can either be used as a tool of liberation or oppression. And that historically, in his country and elsewhere, education has been used as a tool of oppression to maintain class differences and keep the lower class subjugated. He describes this model as a quote-unquote banking theory of theory of education. Banking model of education. There you go. Why exactly is a banking model of education, the old model of education, the oppressive model of education? I'll let you kind of glean those details as you go along. He advocates for moving towards a different model, one that actively encourages learners to question actively all the time, and very much having questioning being one of the primary modes of learning. So yeah, that is going to be the crux of what you'll be reading this week. The vast majority of it, I will say we're starting off kind of heavy with reading with this module. Not all of the modules are going to have this much reading, but I do want you to read Freire's book this week. The next two readings they are briefer, much briefer. Peggy McIntosh's Invisible Backpack. That's not so much a classic in the sociology of education as much as it's a classic in sociology. McIntosh does a very good job of explaining what privilege is in very grounded terms that are kind of easy to understand. Now, one of the things that I think is necessary to delineate in this class is the difference between abstract and grounded knowledge. Abstract knowledge is the kind of knowledge that you learn in a book. You learn by somebody telling you about something. Grounded knowledge is what you learn by actually experiencing something. The classic example I always give to my 314 students is when I was going to move to South Florida. I lived in Miami for 3 years. When I was moving to South Florida, I was like, oh, I should read a book on the Everglades and learn about all of its natural beauty and majesty. And I did. I read a whole tome on the Everglades, and it made it sound like the most beautiful, majestic place full of some of the most fantastic biodiversity on the planet, which is all true. That's all true. It is a fantastic biological wonder, the Everglades. But then I actually visited Everglades National Park, and what I learned through my grounded knowledge of actually experiencing it is, as much as it's magical, it's also horrible. It's also a miserable, hot, sticky place in which every single living creature, especially the insects, want to kill you. And so that was something that was not necessarily conveyed in the book. Now, the abstract knowledge I got was all accurate. The biodiversity was wonderful. But the grounded knowledge was accurate as well. It's not very pleasant to spend a lot of time in the Everglades. And so there is a difference between bodies of knowledge, abstract and grounded. You know, in this class, like in most classes, you're going to get a lot of abstract knowledge, a lot of book kind of facts. About things that cannot be fully understood until you get grounded knowledge, which is actually going into the classroom. I will tell you that in my 314 class, what I generally like to do is have my wife come in. My wife has been a teacher for well over a decade, and she has grounded knowledge where I do not. So anyways, the difference between abstract and grounded knowledge established. One of the reasons why I like the McIntosh article is that she explains what privilege is. I mean, she can't necessarily, give you direct grounded knowledge. You really have to experience privilege to have that grounded knowledge. But she gives knowledge. She writes in a way that uses really clear, illustrative examples that I think are as close to grounded knowledge as you can get without actually having grounded knowledge. Really good writing that uses really vivid, clear examples, I think can get closer to grounded knowledge than kind of high and abstract kind of writing does. But anyways, I mean, a lot of these examples are stuff that you may have experienced yourself. So, I mean, in many ways, some of you may have this grounded knowledge. Now, lastly, the Johnson article. The Johnson article is a really good explainer for dimensions of diversity. And what I would like you to do is kind of read the Johnson article with your final term paper in mind. I mean, hopefully the very first thing you did off the bat for this class is read the syllabus. If you've read the syllabus, you should be aware of the term paper, and the term paper is oriented around dimensions of diversity. This article serves as a good primer for that. It also kind of connects back to the McIntosh article by connecting dimensions of diversity to privilege. And so my hope is that in explaining your term paper in the syllabus, you're fairly clear. Obviously, if you're not, please contact me. But my hope is, after reading about the final term paper, and then reading this article, you have even more clarity, especially in terms of the concepts of dimensions of diversity and the impact that they may have on somebody's life, particularly in the mode of education. So the one thing that's unique to this module that you will be doing is your class introduction. Introduce yourself. This is ungraded, but I generally hope all of you will do it. The class introduction. Introduce yourself however you want. Why are you taking this class? It's probably a good thing to answer. Well, actually, maybe it's not, because it's on the math track and y'all are math students, so that's actually a pretty straightforward thing to answer. I would like to know why you want to be a teacher. I would like to know that. What has kind of inspired you to take this path? It is certainly not the path of least resistance. So I would like to know that. But other than that, tell us whatever you want. I already did one myself. I did a video, like all the kind of discussion boards in this class. It'd be great if you could do a video, but you can type as well. Not everybody has the same ability to take advantage of technology. Yeah, that's up to you. The first module discussion board is up. Once again, you can do video responses, you can do typed responses. It'd be lovely if you could do video responses, though, to keep up the kind of CNU vibe of personable classes and personable learning. So the first module discusses power and privilege. The first module discussion board, I'd like you to discuss power and privilege, and I'd like you to read the McIntosh in the Johnson article before doing this, and go about picking some concepts or ideas from those, and tell me how you would explain that to somebody K-12 in the K-12 grades. We talk about things like power, privilege, dimensions of difference all the time in sociology classes in college, but not everybody goes to college. And generally, I like to think these are important things for people to learn about. And these are things that are seldom discussed in K-12. So I'd kind of like you to consider how might you articulate these kinds of ideas to a younger audience, a K-12 audience. Now, I mean, some of you have the intention of teaching high school. Some of you have the intention of teaching very young children. I guess tailor your response to the population that you anticipate teaching. For the synthesis essay, that is going to be more about your personal experience applying Fierre's banking model to your past experiences. I would imagine the kind of things that Fierre describes is things that you have experienced. I mean, y'all have spent, at this point, the majority of your life in a system of education. So I'd like you to, apply his concepts to your previous experiences in education, and perhaps and think of ways in which, those same experiences could have been changed or done differently to more embody his more idealized or his more ideal, what he prefers in terms of a more liberating form of education. Lastly is the introspective activity. This should be relatively brief. Take one of 4 quizzes from the Social Attitudes Project on implicit bias. This is from Harvard University. This actually comes from the Department of Psychology. And this is a test that is intended to, by tapping into your subconscious, give you an idea about what your biases may be in regard to topics of race or gender or just social relations in general. Now, I would like you to share in your activity like what your response was. That this won't be shared with the rest of the class, or what your results were. And I want you to say how you may take that into consideration when going into a classroom. Now, I will say, in a very Paulo Freire way, you should feel free to question this. I'm a sociologist. This comes from psychologists. As much as they're Harvard psychologists, Harvard is something people at Harvard can be impugned and questioned. This implicit bias test is something that is controversial even within the realm of psychology. So I don't want you to take this test and assume that this is the end-all, be-all assessment of your personal biases. It is not. It is a test. It's creative. It's an innovative kind of test. It's debatable, the value that it actually has. One of the things I think is in the prompt is, do you think this is valid? Whether it's valid or not, it's not for me to say. I'm not a clinical psychologist, so I feel like I can't really critique it as thoroughly as a clinical psychologist could. But I will say I know within the realm of psychology, it's not 100% agreed as valid or accurate. But it is an interesting thing to kind of get your mind going and get thinking about your own personal biases, because I think that is something that is important as a teacher. Is the purpose of these introspective activities is to be introspective, to look at yourself with humility, and understand what your own personal biases may be, because whatever they are, you're going to take them into a classroom. And so I think a lot of being a good teacher, whether it be pre-K or whether it be in college, is having humility and having the ability to question yourself. And I think that's going to be the goal with a lot of these kind of introspective activities. Anyways, that is the introduction to the first module. As always, feel free to contact me if you have any questions. And yeah, I look forward to getting to know everybody over the course of the semester. All right, bye.